about in the sequence of Torah reading or praying, or what's about singing, and what's going on? I
Okay,
never
so,
had the chance to participate in one of a Jewish meeting.
Okay, so Ulrike is asking, what is the place of women in Jewish worship in the synagogue, right?
Yes.
And I should be very, very careful what I'm saying, because we're now in a minority here. I see only John would help me if something goes southwards. Goes south.
I'm here.
Yeah. And even John, I don't know. Maybe your wife is around, so you won't.
Oh, she is, yeah.
You're not at liberty to. Yeah.
I'm a dog and she's a woman.
Right. Right. So basically, guys, it's a very interesting question, and let's address it. Let's address it. It's Judaism. When we talk about Judaism, there are few common denominations when it comes to Judaism. Okay, and I will write and explain a little bit about each of them, and it's relevant for this discussion because one of the elements that distinguish the different Jewish denominations are indeed the place of women, especially the place of women in worship. Okay, and I'll go from most traditional to least traditional, but even the terminology of most traditional to least traditional is a little bit problematic. Okay, and I'll address that in a second. So essentially, we have Orthodox Judaism, right? Comes from the Greek ortho, like orthopedic surgeon, or orthodent. Ortho means straight. Orthodox meaning having the straight thinking, the right way of thinking, like orthodoxy in Christianity, like orthodoxy in general. This is a term that was given to the Orthodox by their ideological foes, but was adopted by them eventually. So Orthodox Jews today rarely know that the term Orthodox Judaism stemmed in criticism of them. They don't know it. But this is how it is. It's stuck. Okay? I would add that within this, you've got the extreme Haredi, or even, okay, so Haredi community, which is divided into smaller sections itself, including Hasidic Judaism. You might have heard that term.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Hasidic Judaism. And you've got modern Orthodoxy. Okay. Modern Orthodox Judaism, or modern Orthodoxy. Modern Orthodox is roughly where you would define myself. Okay. Obviously, I'm none like anyone else, and I'm special snowflake like everybody. but yeah, if you have to color in broad brushstrokes, then I am what's called religious Zionist, which is in general term, again, equivalent to modern Orthodox outside of Israel. There are a lot of subtleties. Okay, so that's roughly the Orthodox Judaism. In Haredi, especially in Hasidic communities, the women in public worship have absolutely no role in public worship. Okay, they might have, they might be very devout. They might read the Psalms, Tehillim, all day long. Okay, but they have no role in active worship in the synagogue. They come to the synagogue usually only on Shabbat. If they're consistent, they come on Shabbat. If not, they only come on holidays, and definitely not during the weekdays. They don't come to the synagogue, and even when they come, they are solely spectators. Okay, that's in Haredi, Hasidic communities, but Haredi in general, which is sometimes known as ultra-Orthodox as well. You might have heard that term, ultra-Orthodox.
Yes.
With the ultra-Orthodox communities, women in synagogue are spectators, c'est tout. Okay? Excuse my French. Yeah. Okay. Literally. Now,
the setup of the of the synagogues that I have seen around Europe, they have a separate seating area.
right, they have a separate seating area.
Mostly on the balcony, all the way in the
It's
back, or even with the
balcony, sometimes in the back. If you go to one of the oldest synagogues in Europe, in Prague, you can see there is this big of a wall separating the women's part from the men's part, and there are small parts where they can actually look into the men's part. That's the most, if we go back to 300 years ago in Europe, that was the case for women. They did not take active role in the synagogue life as a general rule. But that's in line of the place of women in public life in all other religions around. Okay, 300 years ago, women did not take any role in Christianity except for nuns, and definitely not in Islam. Okay, so that's Hasidic, Haredi, ultra-Orthodox place of women in Jewish public worship.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Betsy.
One of my Hebrew teachers told me that they only study Torah and maybe Rashi, but the other books of Tanakh, they don't even really read. Would that be in this category as well? Is this?
Oh, it's a different question. There is definitely some, it's not far from the truth. Okay. It's not exact. Okay. But mostly the women in the Haredi community, usually they would learn Torah. Okay. A little bit of the stories of the Bible, not so much reading the Bible. Parts of the Bible certainly do. As I said, they would read the Psalms, maybe even every day, parts of the Psalm. Like my aunt, she reads from the Psalms every day. My father does. My wife did until all her wishes came true, and which means until she got married, right? She used to finish reading the Psalm every month. She used to read finish the book of Psalms every month until all her wishes came true. So she doesn't need that anymore, right? No.
Until she found you.
Come again?
Until she found you.
Yeah, until she found me. So you can say I downgraded her devotion to God. No, God forbid. Okay. Anyway, so that's as I said, some of the biblical stories they would learn, they would know, they would read a lot of Psalms. As far as post-biblical Jewish material, they would usually be taught things that are related to their everyday life, certain matters of kosher, right? They have to keep a kosher kitchen, so they have to know the rules of kosher They have to know rules that are related to other issues of running a Jewish traditional home. So, but you're right, generally they're not taught other books of the Bible or post-biblical Jewish studies in large, okay? That's in the Haredi community. In the
Okay.
modern Orthodox community.
One more thing.
Yeah?
This is all in Israel, but here in America, is this like the
No,
Chabad?
I'm actually talking about the generally speaking. Now Chabad is specific because Chabad is a Hasidic community, but Chabad, okay, which is a Hebrew acronym of Chokhmah, Binah, and Da'at, 3 Hebrew words that mean wisdom. Chokhmah, Binah means insight, and Da'at means knowledge. Okay, they have a slightly different approach than the other Hasidic sects. So you have countless Hasidic sects. The best way to think of Hasidic sects is like thinking of the pre-modern European principalities, that you would have like the Holy Roman Empire that had dioceses and principalities and all kinds of small dignitaries or princes and dukes and all kinds of that. You have the same as with the Hasidic groups. You have countless of them. Chabad is the exception.
That is similar to Roman jurisdiction. The principalities, the powers, the authority.
No. The reason I've mentioned it is because it goes in regular Hasidic groups, right? Not in Chabad. Chabad is the exception, even though it's very, very well known because it has a lot of outreach to the Jewish community elsewhere. Most of the Hasidic groups, they don't do any outreach.
Okay.
Most of the Hasidic groups, they live in a very secluded communities to themselves. They usually interact only with themselves. Chabad has a lot of outreach. Okay, they believe in outreaching to all, all the world, all the Jews, and sometimes even to non-Jews. That's Chabad, but they are the exception. Usually, Hasidic community are very to themselves. Okay, and it is, I think, it is also reflected in the relationship to the place of women in Chabad versus other Hasidic communities. But also in Chabad, women have absolutely no role in the worship synagogue life. Okay, in Chabad, you may have the Rebbetzin, the woman, the wife of the rabbi, giving like lessons or teaching other women and so forth. But she would teach other women, usually not men. Okay, so that's the Hasidic. Modern Orthodox. So here you have a spectrum. On the one edge of the spectrum, that would edge the Hasidic and the Haredi community. Women would have no role in synagogue life on the one edge. On the other edge, women would take active role in the synagogue life with limitations to what they can do and what they cannot do. Why? Because according to traditional Jewish law, women and men are not obligated to the commandments in the exact same way. Okay? Women are exempt from commandments that are limited by time. That's generally the rule. If you have a commandment you have to do in a certain time, okay, then women are exempt. Let's say men have to blow the shofar or to listen to the shofar on the first day of the 7th month, according to the biblical calendar, which we know is Rosh Hashanah, right? So because it's a commandment that has a limitation of a specific time, women are not obligated to hear the shofar. Regardless to the fact that they're not obligated, they do go and listen to the shofar. Okay, but they're not obligated. Okay, so men have to take the 4 species in the celebration of Sukkot, right? You've seen people with the 4 species on Sukkot, Arba'a Minim, it's called in Hebrew, right? The palm tree, the willow, the myrtle, and the citrus fruit, right? The citron. So women are not obligated because it's something that is limited by time. Same goes for the set prayers of Judaism. The set prayers of Judaism, they have a certain limitation of time. There is a morning prayer, there is a noon or afternoon prayer, and there is a nighttime or evening prayer. Because they have a set limited time, women are exempt from those specific, they have to pray, okay, to say thank you to God, but they're not obligated to the same set of prayers that men are, according to traditional Judaism. Because they are not obligated, they cannot lead the congregation, because there is a legal rule in Judaism. What you are not, the level of, you have to have the same level of obligation as someone else in order to lead them in that activity. Okay, so for instance, women, even if they can blow the horn very well, the shofar, they cannot do it for men because they're exempt, they're not obligated, they're exempt from it, and so they cannot do it for a man. And in the same way, they cannot lead the prayer in the synagogue, even in those places where which are leaning towards more egalitarian place. They tend not to lead certain parts of the prayer that are considered to be more obligatory. So if you want to have a more egalitarian community and still be within what's called orthodoxy or modern Orthodox, you can have the sitting not in the back but side by side, sometimes even rarely sitting as families, but very rare in the Orthodox movement, usually side by side rather than men at the front and women at the back. And you may have certain parts of the prayer led by women, again, in the minority of communities in Israel, small minority of Orthodox communities in Israel, and let's say more and more you can see like the sitting changing from back to side by side. This is something that I think becomes more common, and slowly in, I would say still single-digit % of the Orthodox communities, women can lead certain parts of the prayer. My community, I'll take it as an example. It's not back and front, it's side by side, but women do not lead any part of the prayer. Okay, they don't. And it would be, if someone were to kind of suggest it, it would be quite unnatural for most congregants. The women wouldn't want it, the men wouldn't want it. Most of the men, I would say, and all of the women, I would assume. Yes, Betsy?
What about a non-Jewish person? Are they allowed to visit service
Sure.
and participate?
Sure.
Do they sit by themselves?
No. They can listen. Non-Jews is not a big issue in Israel, but I don't know. Generally, everybody's welcome. Nobody would ask you if you're a Jew or not.
What about a head covering or something? Would they kind of?
Again, it depends. You would feel it's like, I think that in most cases, first of all, I don't think that anyone would, in most cases, definitely within modern Orthodoxy, if it's leaning towards, let's say, modern, very traditional, modern Orthodoxy, someone might look at you funny if you don't have a head covering. But listen, women who are not married, and sometimes people who are divorced, women who are divorced are also without a head covering. So it's not like out of question. Okay, so no, in most
Well,
cases,
now there's another question, Netanel. Why don't they wear a head covering?
To let them know that
so it's a good question. James suggested that it is to let people know that you're married or not married, but it's not the origin of this custom. It's definitely one of the popular ideas or side effects of it, but the origins of it is that the standard of what is called tzeniut or tznius, okay, was such that everybody, all women covered their head, all and certain standards of that kind of modesty. Religious systems are very good in preserving old standards. So there, it's a head covering was not it like think about the 50s. Everybody had a hat. Okay, everybody had a hat. Today you see a person with a hat on the street, you say, why does he have a hat? Okay, if you had a religion that would have been like setting the standards of the 50s, then the people would still have hats. By the way, the Hasidic communities still wear the fair hats of 300 years ago from Europe. You can see them with these fair hats. Why do they put on the fair hats? It wasn't that different than their non-Jewish neighbors 300 years ago. But at a certain point, they decided, oh, we're taking a picture of the current situation, and this is how we're keeping it. This is exactly how we're keeping it, including the color of the socks, and if you put the trousers, the end of the trouser inside the socks or outside the socks. Why? In order to consolidate the walls of religion, to protect it from the winds of modernity. I'm not kidding or making fun. I'm representing the ideology of ultra-Orthodoxy as designed in the 19th century.
But it also honored the ancestors that way too, Netanel. They carried on the
listen,
tradition.
no, but it depends what level of ancestry. Abram did not walk in a fair head. Moses did not walk with a fair head. Jeremiah didn't walk with a fair head. Rabbi Judah the Prince, the reductor and editor of the Mishnah, did not go with a fair head. Abaye and Rava, the most famous sages of the Talmud, did not walk with a fair head. Rabina and Ravashi, the rabbis who edited the Talmud, did not walk with a fair head. Neither Rav Saadia Gaon or Maimonides, or at a certain point in medieval Europe, people walked with a fair head. And that point, okay, we are not changing anything from that point. Okay?
That's very interesting.
It is very interesting. By the way, Chabad is also an exception for that, because every rabbi of Chabad, if you look at the lineage of Chabad, what's called Lubavitch.
Lubavitch, yes.
Yeah, Lubavitch, that's the name of the town in Russia where they come from. Basically, if you look at every rabbi of Lubavitch, they had a different hat. Okay, and all the Chabad, today, the movement of Chabad, they have the same hat as the last rabbi. But each of the preceding rabbis, they had different hats, almost each of them. So they are unique within the Hasidic community. Right, James?
I'm trying to turn my mic off.
Okay, I'll help you, don't worry. So it's muted now. Okay. So
Okay, and then Netanel, you do sit by your wife, or she sits with the women in your synagogue?
first of all, my wife doesn't come to synagogue every Shabbat. She rarely comes, maybe once a month if there is an event in the synagogue after the prayer. So usually she doesn't come on Saturday, on Shabbat, to the synagogue. Again, she's not obligated. She pays, and she doesn't come. She has a long conversation with God every night. Okay. And he listens to her and she listens to him, and they have a beautiful relationship. But she doesn't go to synagogue. She rarely does. Okay.
Even with you being the reader of the
even
everything,
with
she
me
doesn't.
being the reader,
Wow.
yeah, she does. You know, yeah. Some other women might come, and she might come, but she won't sit next to me. She would sit in the women's section, which is
Okay,
divided
but
side
you
by
go
side.
every Shabbat.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
So
because you read.
yeah, I
And then-
would have gone even if I don't read.
Okay.
Listen, even if I don't know, I cannot even think of a situation that I get up on Shabbat and I'm not going to synagogue. It's like I'm sure that you guys, you know, might feel the same, you know, on Sunday or on Shabbat. You know, obviously, what could I do? What would I do on Shabbat if not go to the synagogue? But that's how, you know, I've been doing it since I was very, very, very young. So I can't even think of an alternative.
Do
Okay.
your sons go every Shabbat?
So it's a very good question, and it's a bit of a challenge. So my firstborn, he's now 15. And being that he's a teenager, I did not go through that phase, but he likes to sleep. So I try to wake him up. I give him the option. Listen, I'm going in 5 minutes. I'm going in 10 minutes. I'm going in a half an hour. You know, I'd love for you to come. And last Shabbat he came. He doesn't come like every time, unfortunately. My second son does come, you know, every time. He's 12. We'll see, you know. It's something I can talk with him. I can say it's important for me. But as parents, you know, we have to pick our fights. So it's more of an educational, I think, question than matter of
And it's getting personal too, but it's very
Sure,
normal. I
sure,
remember being
listen.
a teenager and not wanting to get up on Sundays. You're tired.
yeah. Listen, according to Judaism, once you're 13, you're a man. So basically he has the same obligations as I do. So as far nominally, like legally, according to traditional Jewish law, he should come. Okay. But you know, it's between him and God, right? And we are like, the place of the parents is a little bit ambiguous. To what level do I pressure him to do that, you know, and other things that are religion related.
How much is
What
the
does the
time
rabbi-
spent? Sorry, how much is the time spent in the synagogue?
So it depends on the synagogue, okay? But our synagogue, the actual service starts 8:15 in the morning. It ends about 2 hours later. You've got like you've got another 20 minutes studying before for people who want to come, and you've got 5 to 10 minutes study after, which I do after the prayer. Again, it's not exactly part of the service, but we do it as well. So that's between 2 hours, 2.5 hours. There is a synagogue. I told you, I don't know if I told you, I went to Jerusalem with a family maybe 2 months ago. There is a synagogue there that starts, it's not exactly the service. They start singing 3 a.m. and they finish they finish the service about 10:30 a.m. Yeah, so that's they sing between 3 and 7. They start the service at 7 and they finish the service 10:30. So yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
Do you light Shabbat candles every Friday night as a family and do?
Yeah, that's my wife's department. She does it.
Okay.
The women usually light the candles, even though again, if they don't, then the men should. But nobody knows that. Everybody knows that it's women's job to do that. And my wife does. One of her moments with God, again, she has a very good relationship with him. And then after she lights the candle, I go to the evening service. Yeah, in the synagogue. So that's modern Orthodoxy, and in the more modern parts, egalitarian, you can see women assuming some parts of the service. Women can certainly speak, but again, it's rarely done. It's easier for women to give a sermon, so to speak, in the synagogue rather than to lead the prayer, even though it's arguably more important for some. So that's that. Yes, Anne.
Well, couldn't it be? I mean, that's what somebody said in the Netherlands from a rabbi that I came to meet, that these separations still come down from the time where service was done in the temple, and where in the temple it was important that the men were clean, and that they did not have relations with their wives, and that they washed up regularly. And I mean, ladies do have a monthly rhythm, plus when they are with child, the rhythm of life changes.
Mhm.
So I would assume that those statutes of not having to answer to fixed dates and times is not an idea of a degrading of women.
No. But listen, degrading of women was definitely not the intention of these statutes.
Exactly.
At no point. Sometimes, okay, even if they are degrading, perceived as degrading for some women, they were not done in order to degrade women.
Exactly.
Now, in regards to the question about purity, questions of ritual purity, okay, among Ethiopian Jews, okay, women in their period cannot come to the synagogue until they finish their bathing. But this is the only section of Judaism where it is like that. Women may come to synagogue during the whole month, during whichever state of their life cycle, according to all other parts of Judaism. This is a nice explanation. I really don't think that this is the best explanation for it. Just by comparison to other walks of life, women could not be like lawyers and doctors 200 years ago. So naturally they couldn't be rabbis or pastors or what have you. And what's interesting,
that's a completely different social background.
right? I understand. I'm just saying that a priest, okay, it wasn't even a question that women would not, again, at least in the biblical religion, women also were not part of the temple, because the work of the temple was, again, designated for the men priests. I don't know if it's only questions of purity, because women could come and could bring sacrifices in those periods where they were pure. It didn't say, okay, so women priests could serve at the temple in certain time. No, women were not priests at all.
Nathaniel,
Yeah.
please let me interrupt here. Then, can you narrate the incident which Eli's children misbehaved to the women? So here, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, this is a completely other question. What did they do with the women, right? It says they laid down with the women. Rabbinical exegesis has a different view of that, but they were using their power in the temple, in the tabernacle temple of Shiloh, to take advantage of the women and take advantage of the offerings. It's not so surprising. Listen, you've got it with every position of power throughout all of human history. When people are using the power, oftentimes also religious power, to take advantage of what naturally people are seeking. That is, goods, and women were part of it. So that's no different. Now, in regards to we talked only about Orthodox Judaism. So let's talk a little bit about the other two, and I do want to get to the construct chain, infinitive construct as well. So Conservative Judaism. Okay, Conservative Judaism is in Jewish history associated with a German figure. Most of these school of thought are going back to the 19th century in Germany, 18th, 19th century in Germany. Conservative Judaism is associated with Zecharia Frenkel. He called his denomination the Positive Historical Judaism, or something, or by a similar name. And Conservative Judaism tends to be somewhere in the spectrum between Orthodoxy, okay, conservative, and even some would define this area as conservadox. You've got kind of you've got conservadox, between conservative and Orthodox, and this would be Reform Judaism. Now, there are subtleties, but I'm kind of simplifying things. There is a main institution for the conservative movement, and there is a main school. It's called the JTS, Jewish Theological Seminary, and the main institution for the Reform movement is the HUC, Hebrew Union College. But the fact of the matter is that definitely in the Reform community, and also in the conservative to an extent, communities do whatever they want, so these questions are very specific for the communities. In Reform Judaism, women can be rabbis, they can be cantors, they can be everything in Reform Judaism. I don't think that women are limited in any way, shape, or form in Reform Judaism. I would not be surprised if there are more women rabbis graduating every year in the Reform community than men. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if it's correct, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the number. There is also Reconstructionist Judaism. That's a different thing. In the conservative community, well, it is kind of in the middle. I guess in most places, women can participate in most aspects of the service. Maybe in the area of conservatism that is leaning towards orthodoxy, conservadox, they are limited in some ways, but I would guess that in most conservative institutions and places, they can do everything. So that's a little bit about this question about the place of women in public worship in Judaism. Just to give you some numbers, okay? In Israel, if you come to Israel, you would have to look for a conservative or a Reform community like a needle in a haystack. The overwhelming vast majority of communities in Israel they don't call themselves Orthodox, just religious, okay? And being religious in Israel, for 99% of the communities, meaning being Orthodox to a certain level, or traditional, or observant, or there are different words for it. But that's the situation in Israel, where the Reform and the conservative communities are very, very few. Okay, in America, situation is different. In Europe, situation is different. In North America, in general, right, the situation is different. And that's a little bit about the numbers. So in America, the Orthodox Judaism is actually the smaller of these denominations, but it's growing, while the other two movements are not so much growing. So that's a little bit about these issues.